Hi and welcome. My name is Vicki, otherwise known as Heartlandknits on places like Instagram and Ravelry. And this is my podcast about knitting and spinning and sewing and gardening and all the things that I love to do. It has been quite some time since I have recorded an episode. I have no idea what an episode number would be on this. But I wanted to sit down because it has been quite the eventful summer. Not in all the best ways, but I have gotten my hair cut. I've also shattered my wrist. Yes, don't do that. I do not recommend it. um, Long story short on this is I live a block away from the lake, and I usually walk down there in the summer. There's a walking path out on the breakwater, and I try to walk down there every day. And the first weekend of June, I was doing that, and I was on my way home. I was 2 doors down and across the street from my house, and I tripped. There was a piece of sidewalk that wasn't level, and I tripped on it and just went boom right down. I didn't have any sort of recovery steps or I remember tripping and then just went down. I don't know if my other leg just didn't get under me or whatever, but I went down hard, and I know better. I'm a knitter. I know better. I do not put your hands out. And I sort of remember throwing mine sort of out of the way, but when I was on the ground, it was underneath me, and I knew instantly that it was broken, not from the pain, but just from the fact that it was underneath me. I hit my face on the ground, so like my whole face was black and blue for about 3 weeks. Scratched up all my legs, and my glasses flew off, and my phone got smashed, and all those good things. So I ended up getting myself up and going to the people who live across from me, who are long time neighbors, and just knocked on their door and said, I just fell. I think I broke my wrist. Would you please drive me to the ER? Which thankfully they were home, and she did. And yeah, it was they put me in a splint up to here, which I had for 6 days. It was quite a bad break. One doctor, who I did not have surgery with, told me it was shattered like a porcelain vase. That's not something you really want to hear, and I am right-handed, so but I found a really great doctor who specialized in hands, which and he did my surgery, and so I have all great hopes for Wednesday. I know Wednesday won't be the end of the road. When this comes off, there's still work to be done, but I'm thinking if I could knit with it in the cast, I should be able to knit with it out of the cast, and anything above that is just gravy to me. Because yeah, the first 3 weeks were a little tough. I couldn't knit at all, and just sort of did not feel myself at all. I had been working on a bunch of projects to take for knitting camp, which is next weekend. So I'm getting this off on Wednesday, and I head off to knitting camp on Thursday. But when I went back after 2 weeks after my surgery, so I have a titanium plate, and I'm not sure how many pins or screws or whatever they're called, because I won't look at the x-rays. Because I feel like if I look at it, I know that they're in there. I know that I had the surgery and they're in there holding everything in place. But I feel like if I look at them on the x-ray, I will feel them. And right now it doesn't hurt at all, so I just want to leave well enough alone. So I don't know if I'll look at them on Wednesday. I might ask the doctor how many pins are in there or whatever. But so 2 weeks after my surgery, I had x-rays, and I had a new cast put on, and they put on this lovely pink one. At which point I talked to the nurse practitioner, and I said, do you think I could knit? And she kind of nodded her head and said, well, you could try. Which point I looked at the friend that was with me and looked at the nurse practitioner and said, well, I am taking that as a license to knit because I will find a way. I didn't want to do anything the first 2 weeks. I didn't want to do anything that would impact, because you're like moving your wrist or whatever. I didn't want to do anything that could possibly make anything shift around in there. I wanted it to heal up perfectly. So that was I think the last day or the 29th of June. So it was the start of a new month. And I thought, I went home and I had some dishcloth cotton and I thought, I'm going to just like try and see what happens. And it was like I felt I was breathing again, just knitting that dishcloth in that afternoon. And I tried different methods and kind of went back to my original like way of knitting that I usually do, which is continental. So I have the yarn in my left hand, but I don't pick the yarn. I actually throw it with my left hand. So that, and then I'm mostly holding the knitting in my right hand and moving the stitches along. And I found that was just because that was my normal method. It didn't seem to hurt this one. So that's what I went to. My gauge was noticeably looser. I I do have a pretty tight gauge, and I am in those couple weeks right after I broke it and had the surgery. So right after my surgery, I put all my knitting away. I just did not want to see it. I didn't want that reminder that those things were there. And with the shift in my gauge and stuff, I thought, I'm not going to go back to those. I don't know if they'll ever get finished. We'll see what happens after, next week. But I sort of wanted to have a project that I knit with the cast on, just so that I would have it for, I knit this in my cast. And so I wanted something lightweight, because usually my wrists hurt usually because of the weight of the knitting. And so I thought lace, and that weekend was we've had quite a few of them, but it was one of the really warm weekends that it got to like a true 95 degrees, which is rare for us up here in the Midwest. And so something like Kid Silk Haze did not sound very appealing. So that didn't sound very appealing. And I thought something that I've been thinking about that I wanted to do during the summer for a couple years now, but I'm always working on something to get it finished before camp, a bohus or something. And that is a thread doily. I've done a couple of them, years ago, and it's a nice thing to work on in the summer because the crochet cotton is sort of lightweight and it isn't warm or anything on your hands. And so I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do, is I want to do a thread doily. And I got out all my needling patterns, because if I'm going to do a thread doily, I'm going to do a Herbert needling, and looked through them. There are several that I've just been dying to do for a long time that have too many rounds on them to do for like a shawl. But I also thought I wanted to have it completed when this came off, which meant that it would be done before knitting camp. And I didn't want to have to like push really hard on it, because I didn't know how long I could, that I probably wouldn't be able to knit as fast or as long as normal. I mean, at the beginning of this, I could knit maybe, 2 rounds because they were small. And then and then I could knit 1 round. I couldn't knit for nearly as long as I normally could, until the very end. It got to be about 500 stitches on a round, and I could do one of those rounds. It took about 45 minutes, and I could do 1 round complete at a time before I'd have to set it down, because I didn't want to get carpal tunnel while I was in a cast. So anyway, the pattern that I chose was Aster, which is from the Grosse und Kleine Decke portfolio of patterns. It has 144 rounds, and I thought that seemed very doable. I've done this design as a 2/3 with wool yarn into a little half, like 2/3 circle shawl. And then I extended that one. I extended way out on the edges because I wanted to make it bigger. But I thought it seemed like it would be easily sort of doable. I wasn't going to have to push on it. So anyway, I blocked it out on Friday. So let me hold this up. The ends still I need to sew in. So anyway, this is my cast knitting. It's a complete round, and I will try to hold this really steady so that you can see all the knitting. It is 21 inches in diameter, and I used the thread. It was a 30 count or size 30. I think it's Aunt Lydia's. It said extra fine. It had a really nice twist on it, a much nicer twist than kind of crochet cotton that I had used kind of way back. So it didn't sort of try to untwist while you were knitting. And I used 000 needles because when I started out, I knew that my gauge had definitely shifted looser, but by the time I ended, I was thinking that it seemed a little bit tighter. And indeed, on Friday night, I knit another dishcloth, and it was noticeably smaller. My gauge had definitely tightened up. So I'm going to see, I have a little bit of the ball of yarn from the dishcloth cotton left. So on Wednesday night, I plan to knit a little bit with those same needles and just see how, knitting without the cast on, if that affects it, made it, up or down. But anyway, that gives me hope that maybe I can get back to those projects that I had started in May. And you hear the airplanes? It's EAA week. And the planes are all starting to come in. Anyway, so this doily was my knitting that I finished with my cast. Part of the other thing that I really missed this summer when I broke it, when I broke my wrist, was that I couldn't sew. It just sort of broke my heart because I had spent 6 weeks, like March and half of April, doing fitting muslins of all these summer dresses, and I had all this fabric. I bought all kinds of fabric at the end of last summer, and then I bought all kinds of more fabric for summer dresses. And I mean, at first I was in the big splint, and then the first cast that I had on after the surgery, my thumb was much more restricted, and so I couldn't do even think about trying to sew. And then when I had this one, I was knitting, but I was worried about cutting out fabric because you have the big heavy shears, and that's a motion. I didn't know because at first I couldn't even use my little scissors to cut herbs with and things. So as my hand I got more movement with it, I started thinking about, I really want to sew something, and I started trying to think of workarounds for cutting out. And so I got one of those great big mats that you use a rotary cutter on, because I thought, well, maybe that going forward, that's how I will have to, cut out fabric. And I tried it, and I thought, well, maybe my left hand could learn to do that. My left hand has learned a lot of things in the last 6 weeks. I mean, it took a week, but I could sign my name legibly instead of just a little scribble. It's learned a lot of things that could when my hair was long, I could, put it up in a twist by itself, just left-handed, and it learned a lot of things. It would need a lot more practice to learn. There's a eye-hand coordination thing going on that it did not work. And even with using it with my right hand, it felt like I was stressing my wrist out more with the rotary cutter than when I tried it with the shears. So last week I just thought, knitting camp was a week away, and I had half of my show and tell dress cut out. It was going to be the Belladonna dress by Deer and Doe Patterns. I had done a wearable muslin of it, and I had the fabric. I had the underlining cut out, but I didn't have the other fabric cut out, and it was going to be couture and stuff. And I thought I was not sure that I could. That's a lot of hand stitching, and I just wasn't sure that I would be up for that. And so the other dress that I really, really wanted for this summer was a black and white gingham dress. I just bought it at Joann's, and it was going to be the wearable muslin for this pattern, but it was a nice shirting gingham, so more threads per inch than just kind of the regular gingham they always have. But I wanted to do the Deer and Doe Bleuet dress, which is a shirt dress. I was going to do kind of solid black kind of accents on it, and so that's the one I thought maybe I could try to do that. And so I cut out in little pieces. So I did the back, and it's in panels. So that is dressed as a shirt dress, but it's like princess seamed in panels all the way down. And so I did kind of the middle back and the two side backs, and I cut those out one day and then sewed them, and tried to space out using that shears. And so it's together. It's not finished. There's things I'm going to do. I'm going to rip a part of it out. So anyway, I thought I will take it in my phone in and show you, because I told you my phone got smashed when my wrist got smashed, and I had to get a new fancy phone. So the camera's really nice on it. So let me take that in there and show you that. Okay, so here's my Bleuet dress work in progress. This is the back of it. I love the black bow. It needs a little pressing, but let me turn this around. And this is the front of it. It is put together. I wanted to show you, I'm really happy with the insides of it. I've French seamed all the seams, and then they are top stitched with the black. And I just love how how clean everything is finished. And then this pattern is the first time I've ever used a hem facing for the hem, and I am a big fan. I did just used a black lace to finish off that top edge of the hem facing, and then I've sewn that down by hand. But you sew this the hem facing, so those seam allowances are in there, and then you understitch it down so it is not going to slide out, but it gives such a nice appearance to the hem. You don't have to worry about getting that sort of flat as a pancake look that I really hate. And look how nice so anyway, it still needs buttonholes and buttons, and here is the bad part. So I love all the little features of it and all the finishing on it until we get to this. Yeah, that is not good. This not good at all. This is the first. These pins are because you need to. This is the outer collar stand, and you're going to top stitch that down, which I'm not going to do right now. I'm going to take this off and redo it. I was reading about a different way of doing it where it's sort of opposite as the pattern hand. You do it, you sew the outer collar stand on first, and then you baste the collar onto it, and then make the sandwich with the inner collar stand, and then when you're doing it, you can get that perfectly aligned with the front, and yeah, this is no. Yeah, so that is a work in progress still to do, go with that, but I'm otherwise really, really happy with this dress, and hoping that I'll get it finished in the next day or so. So hopefully that will get finished before Wednesday. I'm going to work on that this afternoon, and then I've got, a few more days. I'm thinking that it'll get done. Once I get that collar on, I just have the buttonholes and buttons to put on, and that'll be done. So, and then I will show you what I plan to knit next. I just have this wound here, this skein, which that's kind of the color. This is Madeline Tosh Merino Light in the Morning Dove color. And this is going to be a shawl that I want to make for my friend Mary, who took me to my surgery and took me up to my doctor's appointments, because it was up in the next town up that I've driven up there now by myself because I can hang on to the wheel. But when I didn't have this cast on, I drove myself, but I wouldn't really want to drive on the highway just one-handed. So anyway, I wanted to make her a shawl. It's going to be one of the Boo Knits ones. I'm not sure which one. They all kind of start out the same and I'm going to do it so that it is kind of all plain and then just has the fancy edge. Some of them have like are all lace, but some of them just have a plain section at the top and then kind of a couple of tiers of lace and then the fancy edge. I'm going to just do it completely plain and then the fancy edge. But I thought that will be something that I can take to knitting camp and, work on there, especially the plain section just has the kind of little edges or whatever. I'm really thinking that I'm going to be able to knit after this comes off. People have been feeding me sort of horror stories. Oh, when the cast comes off, it's going to swell and it's going to hurt so much. And I'm thinking I could knit in the cast. I should be able to knit out of the cast. If you liked my video, please do give me a thumbs up and please do subscribe. And also there's a little bell that you can do when you subscribe. There's a little bell that you can press that will send out notifications when I record, since I am not so regular yet, hoping to become a little more regular. But I would love for you to come back. From my heart to yours, thanks so much for watching, and happy knitting.